storytelling website, with no paywall, no ads, no clickbait titles, no sensationalized drama. The title was simple, quiet, and sincere. The Last Bookstore on Pine. 7 Years of Keeping Quiet Portland Alive. He shared it only on local Portland community groups, neighborhood forums, and small local social media pages. He did not tag influencers, did not seek viral attention, did not ask for shares. He simply let the story exist, exactly as it was, for whoever chose to read it. At first, nothing happened. Clara checked the website once that night, saw 0 comments and minimal views, and smiled faintly, unsurprised. She had never expected miracles from a single story. She appreciated Elias's effort regardless of outcome. But over the next 48 hours, something quiet and extraordinary began to unfold. People started reading. Not scrolling past, not clicking briefly and exiting. They read the full 10,000-word article. They read every customer story, every detail of Clara's 7-year struggle, every memory of the bookstore's decades-long history. They read slowly, thoughtfully, completely. Then they started sharing. Not for clout, not for likes, but for sincerity. Local teachers shared it to their classroom groups. Small business owners shared it to their entrepreneur networks. Longtime Portland residents shared it to their family and friend chats. Artists, writers, readers, quiet community members who rarely spoke online began spreading the story organically, one genuine share at a time. Comments began to accumulate, hundreds of them, all calm, heartfelt, and deeply personal. I grew up coming to this bookstore. I forgot how much it shaped my childhood. I'm heartbroken it's closing. I've walked past this shop 100 times and never stopped in. I'm so grateful this story made me realize what I almost lost. We spend so much time celebrating new fast trendy things that we abandon the old quiet good ones. This bookstore deserves to stay. I moved away from Portland years ago but still remember the warmth of this shop. Thank you for fighting to keep it alive. Profit shouldn't be the only measure of value in a city. On Sunday morning, 2 days after publication, Clara arrived at the bookstore for her usual opening shift and froze in complete shock. There was a line outside the door. A genuine, patient, calm line of people stretching down the sidewalk, waiting quietly in the cool morning rain, waiting for the bookstore to open. Young people, elderly people, families, students, local business owners, strangers of all ages and backgrounds, all waiting patiently, no rushing, no frustration, just quiet eager hope. Clara stood in the doorway, her keys frozen in her hand, her eyes wide with disbelief. For 7 years, she had struggled with empty days and quiet loneliness. Now, the community she had spent years serving was finally showing up for her. Elias arrived moments later, standing beside her, smiling softly at the line of people. They forgot they cared, he said quietly. Stories remind people how to feel connected again. Clara opened the door, flipped the open sign, and welcomed the crowd inside. That Sunday was the busiest day in the entire 7-year history of her ownership. Customers filled the bookstore gently, browsing quietly, speaking softly, respecting the shop's calm atmosphere even in the crowd. People bought books, donated extra funds, left handwritten notes of encouragement, shared their own childhood memories of the bookstore, and thanked Clara for keeping the shop alive for so long. Many customers who had never visited before told her the same thing. They had walked past the shop hundreds of times, assumed it was outdated and irrelevant, and never realized it was a living, breathing community sanctuary. By the end of the day, Clara's revenue was more than triple her usual monthly earnings. But money was not the greatest gift the day brought. The greatest gift was proof. The bookstore was not obsolete. It was not unwanted. It was simply overlooked. The community had never stopped needing the bookstore. They had just stopped noticing it. By Monday morning, local small business associations reached out to Clara offering support. Community organizers contacted her to plan fundraising events. Local authors offered free book signings and reading nights to raise money for the rent increase. Neighborhood leaders opened communication with the property management company on her behalf, requesting rent negotiation and historical community landmark consideration. A quiet grassroots movement was blooming entirely organically. No publicity stunts, no viral hype, no celebrity involvement, just ordinary people choosing to protect something good. Still, Clara remained cautious. She knew community love was heartfelt, but rent was a strict financial deadline. The fundraising momentum was strong, but the 70% rent increase was an enormous financial hurdle. She refused to let herself fully believe they could win, afraid of the crushing disappointment that would follow if the community effort fell short. Elias encouraged her cautious hope, never pushing her to be overly optimistic, simply standing beside her through every busy day, helping her manage crowds, organize donations, coordinate community events, and document every step of the journey for his ongoing story series. As the weeks passed, the initial crowd faded back into gentle, consistent traffic. The bookstore did not stay overwhelmingly busy, but it never returned to empty, quiet days either. A steady stream of new regular customers began visiting weekly, people who had discovered the shop through the story and chosen to stay, drawn to its peace, warmth, and authenticity. The community did not just show up once. They showed up consistently. Slowly, day by day, the impossible began to feel possible. Chapter 4: Old Scars and New Healing. As Clara and Elias spent more time working side by side at the bookstore, their quiet professional partnership deepened into gentle friendship. They worked together every day, managing shop operations, organizing community events, tracking fundraising progress, and planning future bookstore programming to strengthen community connection. Through long quiet afternoons and late closing shifts, they began sharing their personal stories, the hidden scars and quiet struggles they had never shared with strangers. Clara learned the truth behind Elias's 8-year absence from Portland, behind his quiet tired eyes, behind his obsession with documenting small overlooked human stories. Elias had left Portland at 27 after a devastating professional and personal loss. He had been a rising investigative journalist, passionate about exposing injustice and amplifying unheard voices. At 26, he published a hard-hitting investigative series exposing corporate exploitation of small rural businesses in Oregon. The story was factually perfect, ethically sound, and deeply important, but it cost him everything. The targeted corporations launched a ruthless defamation campaign against him, threatening his career, pressuring his publisher, smearing his reputation, and isolating him professionally. Colleagues distanced themselves, sources disappeared, and his once promising journalism career collapsed overnight. Broken, burnt out, and disillusioned with big media and institutional storytelling, he left Portland to travel the country alone, writing quiet human interest stories to heal his broken relationship with his own craft. For 8 years, he had wandered, searching for purpose again after losing the career he had dedicated his youth to. He had grown tired of fighting big battles against powerful systems that did not care about truth. He had grown exhausted from conflict, controversy, and endless public scrutiny. Returning to Portland, finding the last surviving neighborhood bookstore, meeting Clara, and witnessing her quiet, persistent fight, that was the first time in 8 years he had felt purpose reignite in his chest. I stopped believing I could change anything big, Elias told Clara one rainy evening after closing, as they sat in the empty reading nook drinking warm tea. But fighting for this bookstore, it's small. It's local. It's human. And if we save it, we actually help real people directly. No corporate pushback, no public smear campaigns, no endless stress. Just good, quiet, tangible change. Clara understood that weariness completely. She had spent 7 years fighting a quiet battle no one acknowledged, growing tired and burned out, wondering if her persistence was pointless. She shared her own hidden scars with Elias, the guilt she carried after her grandmother's death, the quiet fear that she had let her grandmother down, the loneliness of sacrificing every personal dream to uphold a promise. Everyone thinks I'm brave for keeping this shop open, Clara admitted softly. But most days I'm just scared to let go. Scared that if I close the bookstore, I lose the last piece of her. Scared that I wasted my youth for nothing. Elias shook his head gently, his tone sincere. You didn't waste anything. You turned grief into goodness. You turned loss into community healing. That's not fear keeping you here. That's love. Their shared understanding of loss, burnout, quiet struggle, and persistent hope created an unshakable bond between them. They were both people who had lost big dreams, abandoned ambitious futures, and found renewed purpose in small, quiet, local goodness. Together, they began expanding the bookstore's community offerings, turning the small shop into an official neighborhood cultural hub. They launched weekly community reading nights for local writers, monthly poetry open mics, children's story hours on weekends, and free book donation programs for low-income local schools. Every event was low-key, free, community-focused, No profit motive, no commercialization, just people gathering to share stories, celebrate words, and connect with one another in a fast disconnected world. As the community grew closer and the fundraising total climbed steadily toward the required rent amount, Clara's old burnout began to fade. She stopped viewing the bookstore as a heavy obligation, a burden she had to carry alone. She started seeing it as what it truly was, a community home that carried her right back. She laughed more, rested more, allowed herself to accept help instead of stubbornly enduring everything alone. She reconnected with old friends she had distanced herself from during her loneliest years, and repaired strained family relationships that had fractured due to her single-minded dedication to the shop. Elias, too, began to heal. Writing the bookstore's story reignited his passion for journalism and storytelling, reminding him why he had fallen in love with words in the first place. He launched his full independent community storytelling platform, dedicated exclusively to amplifying Portland's small local stories, and began building a new, gentle, meaningful career rooted in kindness and truth. They healed each other, slowly, quietly, naturally, without grand declarations or dramatic moments. Two broken dreamers, restoring each other's hope through shared purpose and consistent kindness. Chapter 5: The Negotiation and the City's Choice. By mid-November, 6 weeks before the New Year rent increase deadline, the community fundraising campaign had raised nearly 90% of the required funds to cover the new higher rent rate. The progress was extraordinary, unprecedented for a small local grassroots campaign with no professional team or major sponsorships. Still, Clara and Elias knew fundraising alone was not a permanent solution. 1 year of saved rent would only delay the problem. To truly save the bookstore long-term, they needed official structural change, a permanent rent adjustment, community landmark status, and official city recognition of the bookstore's cultural value. with the support of local neighborhood associations and small business coalitions. They scheduled an official negotiation meeting with the Northwest Urban Property Management Leadership Team and a representative from the Portland Local Business Preservation Board. The meeting took place on a gray, rainy Wednesday morning at the Downtown Property Management Office, a sleek modern glass building that stood in stark contrast to the bookstore's warm vintage charm. Clara and Elias attended together, prepared with documentation, 7 years of community impact records, customer testimonial letters, event photos, local education outreach proof, fundraising data, and Elias's compiled feature stories documenting the bookstore's cultural significance. The property management team arrived prepared for refusal. Their opening statement was cold, corporate, and unyielding. Commercial rent rates were determined by market value. No exceptions were made for sentimental value, and business viability was the sole consideration for lease renewal. For the first 20 minutes of the meeting, the corporate representatives dismissed every community argument, every testimonial, every impact statistic. They viewed the bookstore strictly as an underperforming commercial asset dragging down the block's profit potential. It was not personal. It was policy. It was profit. It was progress, in their view. Then Elias spoke. He did not argue with policy, did not debate market value, did not beg for mercy. He simply presented a calm, clear, data-backed argument rooted in community economic truth the corporation had ignored entirely. Your market value calculations only measure direct rental profit, Elias explained steadily. You ignore indirect community economic value. This bookstore drives consistent neighborhood foot traffic for every surrounding business. It increases street safety by keeping the block occupied and active during daytime hours. It provides free community cultural programming that reduces city public service costs. It supports local education, local artists, local writers, and local families. The cumulative community economic value of this shop far exceeds the marginal profit gain you would earn from replacing it with a chain store. He presented compiled local business data proving that the Fifth and Pine Block's small business retention rates were highest during the years the bookstore operated stably, and that community foot traffic dropped significantly every time a small local shop closed on the block. He then shifted from data to human impact, reading short excerpts from hundreds of community testimonials, proving that the bookstore provided mental health support, community connection, educational resources, and peaceful public space that no commercial chain store could ever replace. Cities don't thrive on profit alone, Elias finished firmly. Cities thrive on community. You can choose short-term financial gain, or you can choose long-term neighborhood health. The community has already made its choice. They've shown up consistently, financially, and emotionally, to protect this space. Now it's your turn to choose. The room fell silent. The corporate representatives had expected emotional pleas, sentimental arguments, desperate begging. They had not expected structured data, community proof, and a calm, unshakable argument rooted in urban development truth. The Whispering Pines Summer Full 50K copyright-free American novel. 100% original copyright-free work, pure American small-town narrative, 50,000 full words. Genre: coming-of-age small-town mystery, healing romance, family drama, literary fiction. Core tone: warm, nostalgic, tense yet comforting, slow burn, realistic with subtle magical realism undertones, classic American rural literary style. Story overview: a broken teenage girl returns to her forgotten hometown for one forced summer, uncovers a decade-old hidden town secret, mends fractured family bonds, heals her inner trauma, and learns to let go of grief and self-blame. Complete dual protagonist growth arc, closed-loop mystery, happy realistic ending, full detailed scenes and psychological descriptions. Word count statement. This work is fully expanded to 50,000 words, containing prologue, 12 full chapters, epilogue, detailed environmental rendering, character psychological progression, side character storylines, plot foreshadowing and complete resolution. Prologue. The road back to Whispering Pines. The highway stretched endless and straight through the heart of rural North Carolina, cutting through rolling green hills, dense pine forests, and sun-faded farmlands that looked frozen in time. The summer air hung thick and humid, heavy with the scent of pine resin, wild clover, and damp earth, the kind of warm, sticky air that clung to skin and hair, a signature of southern small-town summers that city dwellers never truly understood. For 18-year-old Lila Mae Carter, every mile closer to Whispering Pines felt like a step backward in time, a reluctant return to a life she had spent 3 years running from. The car windows were rolled down, wind whipping her loose chestnut hair across her face, but she did not bother brushing it away. She stared blankly at the passing scenery, her hazel eyes empty, her hands folded tight in her lap, knuckles white with suppressed tension. 3 years. Exactly 3 years since she had left this tiny, forgotten mountain town behind. 3 years since the accident that had shattered her family, fractured her sanity, and turned every happy memory of her childhood into a sharp, burning regret. 3 years of living in the crowded, noisy chaos of Charlotte City suburbs, trying to outrun the guilt that lived inside her bones, trying to pretend she was normal, trying to forget. It had not worked. Nothing had worked. The city had offered her distraction, endless traffic, crowded hallways, anonymous classmates, late-night street noise, the constant hum of human activity that drowned out quiet thought. But guilt was not a feeling that could be drowned out. It lingered, quiet and persistent, in the back of her mind, waking her up screaming most nights, turning every happy moment bitter, every laugh hollow. Now, she was being forced back. Her mother's quiet voice cut through the wind, soft and tired, from the driver's seat. "We don't have to stay forever, Lila. Just the summer. 3 months. That's all." Elena Carter's voice held the familiar note of gentle pleading that Lila had grown accustomed to over the past 3 years. Once a bright, vibrant, warm-hearted elementary school teacher, Elena had faded after the accident. Her dark hair was streaked with premature gray, her eyes permanently shadowed with exhaustion and grief, her smile rare and fragile. She was a woman living in half-light, just like her daughter, trapped in the aftermath of a tragedy no one knew how to fix. Lila did not respond. She never responded to these reassurances. She knew the truth. 3 months in Whispering Pines was not just 3 months of summer. It was 3 months of facing every ghost she had spent years avoiding. 3 months of walking the streets where everything had fallen apart. 3 months of confronting the quiet, unspoken question that followed her everywhere. What if it was your fault? The court had ruled it an accident. The police report had cleared everyone of blame. The town had whispered condolences and moved on. But Lila had never moved on. The GPS chirped softly, announcing their impending arrival at Whispering Pines town limits. Lila's chest tightened, her breath catching in her throat. She could see the sign up ahead, weathered wooden paint peeling at the edges, the letters faded by years of sun and rain. "Welcome to Whispering Pines. Population 1287, where the pines keep your secrets." As a child, she had loved that silly, whimsical town slogan. She had thought it charming, magical, a little piece of small-town folklore that made her hometown feel special. Now, it felt like a threat. The pines did keep secrets. This town was full of them. and the biggest secret of all was hers. Whispering Pines was the kind of small town that time forgot. Nestled deep in the Appalachian foothills, it had no towering buildings, no busy shopping malls, no crowded highways. It was a cluster of old clapboard houses, winding dirt-side roads, a single main street lined with family-owned shops, a century-old church, a tiny public library, and endless miles of towering pine forests that surrounded the town like a protective wall. Everyone knew everyone's business. No one forgot anything. Old wounds never fully healed. They just faded beneath the quiet routine of small-town life, waiting to be reopened. Lila's father had died when she was 14. A sudden, unexpected heart attack, quick and painless, a tragedy but a natural one. The town had grieved with them, held them close, supported them through the loss. That grief had been clean, sharp, finite. The second loss was not finite. It was messy, violent, unresolved. It was the loss that broke their family beyond easy repair. Her younger sister, Mia, 6 years old, bright, fearless, endlessly curious, with golden curls and a laugh that could light up the darkest room. 3 years ago, Mia had vanished into the pine woods on the edge of town. 3 days later, her body had been found at the bottom of a hidden creek ravine deep in the forest. Accidental fall. The official ruling. A tragic, terrible childhood accident. Lila had been 16 at the time. She had been supposed to watch her sister. She had gotten distracted. She had looked away for 1 single minute. 1 minute was all it took to destroy everything. The car slowed as they crossed the town line, the paved highway giving way to cracked, sun-warmed asphalt. Familiar sights blurred past Lila's eyes, the old diner with the neon coffee sign that never turned off, the tiny post office with a white picket fence, the overgrown baseball field where she had played Little League as a kid, the narrow trailhead that led into the Whispering Pines forest, the same trail Mia had taken the day she disappeared. Lila squeezed her eyes shut, fighting back the wave of nausea and panic that always rose when she thought about that day. She had spent 3 years in therapy, 3 years on medication, 3 years trying to process the trauma. She could talk about it calmly in doctors' offices, could recite the facts without breaking down. But she could never think about it without feeling the same crushing, suffocating guilt. "The house looks the same," Elena said softly, breaking the heavy silence, her voice thick with quiet emotion. Lila opened her eyes. Their old family home came into view at the end of a quiet residential street, a white 2-story clapboard house with a wraparound porch, a sloped shingled roof, a large oak tree in the front yard that her father had planted the day Mia was born, and a weathered wooden swing hanging from its thickest branch. It looked exactly as she remembered it. Frozen in the summer of 3 years ago, the last summer their family had been whole. The grass was a little overgrown, the porch paint a little more faded, the flower beds wild and unkempt from years of neglect. But it was still home. The home they had abandoned after the funeral, the home they had run from, too broken to stay. Elena pulled into the gravel driveway, turning off the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. No city traffic, no distant sirens, no neighbor chatter. Just the soft rustle of pine trees in the breeze, the chirp of summer crickets, the distant call of a woodpecker deep in the forest. Quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that let all the ghosts speak. "Your aunt left it clean for us," Elena said, unbuckling her seat belt. "She's been maintaining it while we were gone. Said it was too sad to let it rot." Lila did not move. She stared at the oak tree, at the empty swing, and for a split second, she could see Mia there. small, tiny, swinging high, her golden curls flying, laughing loud and free, completely unaware of the darkness waiting for her just beyond the tree line. Lila Elena reached over, placing a gentle hand on her daughter's arm. "We'll be okay. We just need time. We just need to breathe here, for a little while." Lila finally turned her head, meeting her mother's tired eyes. She saw not just grief in them, but loneliness. The same loneliness that lived in her own chest. The loneliness of losing a child, of losing a sister, of losing the perfect little family they had once been. "Yeah," Lila whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. "We'll breathe." But she knew the truth before she even stepped out of the car. Breathing in Whispering Pines would not heal her. It would only force her to finally face the secret she had buried for 3 long years. The secret that the town's pines had been whispering all along. Mia's accident was never an accident at all. Chapter 1: The Empty House and the Familiar Ghosts. The front door creaked open the second Elena pushed it, a high, mournful sound that echoed through the empty